He really loves helping people. He's very proficient in his understanding of credit and debt, and he is coined the king of debt. So without further ado, Mr. Jack McCall.
What's going on, baby? Thank you, Carlton. Appreciate it. What's going on, guys? How you guys feeling today? Great to see you guys. I remember 3 years ago, one of my friends I saw on his Instagram story, and he was posting, he was at a dinner with Carlton Dennis. And at this time, Carlton was blowing up on YouTube. And I remember thinking how cool it was to see my friend at a dinner with Carlton Dennis, like such a legend. And then fast forward a couple years, we're good friends going on ski trips. I'm a client of Tax Alchemy, and now I'm here with you guys today. So thank you guys so much, Kyle, the rest of the team, Carlton, thank you guys. Thanks to everyone for being here. I am in the business of helping entrepreneurs get access to money from the banks, specifically through 0% interest business credit cards, as well as business lines of credit. I've been doing it for several years, and my mission is to help people get access to money from the banks. Because when I was starting in business, I didn't have these resources, and I was really an entrepreneur for 7 years, and I didn't understand how I could do this from the banks. And it took me a very long time to actually figure it out. So this right here on the right is John D. Rockefeller, who monopolized the oil industry a couple 150 years ago or so. And one of the big reasons he succeeded so early on in entrepreneurship is because he had really good relationships with the banks. And because he did, he was able to borrow tons of money and acquire all of his competition, as well as having really, really good accounting and, of course, tax strategy as well. But I believe the more money you can borrow, the more money you can make, specifically when you can borrow it at a very low interest rate. Obviously, credit is a tool. You can ruin yourself with credit, and it can also take you to the next level. And one of my good friends and mentors, Mark Moss, who was here earlier today, I did a webinar with him a couple months ago, and he was talking about an experience where in 2008, when the real estate crisis happened, he couldn't take advantage of the discounted assets because he didn't build his purchasing power beforehand. And his good friend now, Robert Kiyosaki, did, and so they just cleaned up house, bought all these discounted assets, and Robert Kiyosaki is obviously doing pretty well today because he did things like that. So building purchasing power, I believe, is a very, very important thing to do as a business owner, even before you need it. A little bit about me. I was approved for $500,000 in business credit in just over a year when I started in business funding. These were on brand new businesses, so it's not like I had a ton of revenue, a ton of age on my business. I didn't have those things, but I was able to really figure it out because I got in touch with underwriters and business relationship managers, so I understood what exactly these underwriters were looking for, and then I reverse engineered exactly that, cracked the code, and now I've been teaching the same strategy or funding strategies about this to over 3,000 entrepreneurs. I got a book on Amazon, and I've helped fund businesses collectively over $40 million through 0% interest business credit cards. And so I really want to help you guys understand how to do this as well, and help you guys get access to money from the banks so you're never short on capital. So really, it took me a long time to figure this out in terms of this funding option in general. When I had my first business when I was in my low 20s, I was selling hoverboards. I was importing them from China, and I was using my hard-earned cash. At the time, I had literally $5,000 to my name. My business partner had $5,000. And so we were sending all of our money over to a manufacturer in China. We got 10 or 20 of these hoverboards, and then we sold them for a premium in the States. And then we sent the money back. And then we waited for the shipment to come across on the boat, a few weeks. Then we sold more. It was a very slow turnaround on when we could get inventory. And if you guys remember hoverboards, or who has fallen on their ass on a hoverboard? Okay, I figured a few people. So that was a fad. That only lasted for about a year and a half. And looking back at it, I missed out on making millions of dollars because I didn't have access to money. So I didn't take advantage of this amazing opportunity I had in front of me. If I go into the opportunity now I have purchasing power. Now I understand you have to move quick and you have to take advantage of certain opportunities. And I met people who had access to millions of dollars, who did buy tens of thousands of hoverboards and made several millions of dollars because they were prepared. My second business, I was like 24 years old. I was selling these inflatable loungers you maybe see at music festivals, also a very hot and viral product. We were one of the first companies to sell these in the United States, and I knew I needed access to money because I already made that mistake on the hoverboard. So I found an equity partner. I gave them 51% of the company, controlling stake. They brought some money, they brought some relationships, And ultimately that helped at the beginning, but then I realized it was the wrong business partner. I was naive. They weren't delivering on their what they're said in the contract, et cetera. So it was a nightmare situation. I had to buy them out, et cetera. But I did understand that if I brought an equity partner, I could raise money and that would help me scale in business. And that did help, and that was a very good lesson I learned. My third business, I learned a different way to finance businesses, and that was through a business loan. And so I was paying interest on this loan, but it did allow me to get access to capital so I can buy hotel inventory up front in Cabo San Lucas and help send college kids down there for spring break. Very fun business, and ultimately that helped lead us to an acquisition. If it wasn't for that borrowing the money, buying the inventory, we weren't able to take market share from our competitors, and then it wouldn't have led to an acquisition. So that was like an aha moment of like, wow, okay, I can borrow money, I could move quicker in business, and I compete more aggressively with my competitors. But at the end of the day, I was paying interest, and then I found out about a far superior way to fund businesses with 0% interest business credit. And so you can do this without paying any interest during the introductory period, which is between 9 and 18 months. You don't need to pay interest, and you don't need to give away equity, as long as you can pay it back in that introductory period, and also go into different strategies on how we can balance transfer to different 0% cards, so you can actually get 0% for multiple years by doing these strategic balance transfers. Who in here has a business credit card already? Okay, so good. Anyone here have at least $100,000 approved in limits on business credit cards? Okay, a few people, good. It's good to understand. So I want to help all you guys get to that point. The next product I'm going to be talking about a little bit later in the presentation is the business lines of credit. So to get these, your business has to have at least 2 years of age to even qualify for these in the first place. Some banks only do 1 year, but high majority do 2 years. Generally, proof of income is required. There's some they don't require any, but generally you need to show tax returns, profit and loss statements, things like that. They do come at interest, so 10 to 16%. But it's really cool for business lines of credit. You only pay interest when you're using the money. And so it shows up in your bank portal as a bank account, essentially. So you can just, if you have a $50K line of credit, you can just easily borrow from it, easy transfer, boom, you got access to $50K. You can put that in a real estate deal, whatever it is, and then when you want to pay it back, boom, you pay it back. It's very easy to access the business line of credit. The banks will be your guys' business partner. And so if you've run into a situation and you're struggling to get access to capital, I have found the easiest way to get access to capital is building good relationships with the banks, building strong personal credit, and they want to lend to you. The banks are in the business of lending money. They want to be your business partner. You just have to make yourself attractive, and that's what I'm going to help provide clarity on today. United States of America, we have the best resources in terms of getting access to money in the entire world. Canadians, British, they don't even have access to this type of funding. There's even companies that help foreign investors get access to the United States banking system through a social security number or through an ITIN number, which then gives them access to borrow money through credit cards from the banks. And so when I see people not taking advantage of such an amazing resource we have, it bums me out a bit because it's just such an amazing resource that just most people just don't understand it's available to them, or they don't understand how exactly to get approved for these incredibly high limits. It took me 6 or 7 years as an entrepreneur before I even learned about that this was even possible. And when I learned about it, I was like, damn, if I've been in business for that long, there's got to be millions of other people that don't even know about it or certainly don't know how to do it effectively. So that's why it became my mission. So a lot of you guys have business cards, really good to hear. In terms of what it is exactly, you can use your EIN to get approved for business credit cards, and you can leverage the age, the entity type, and the cash flow of the business. Cash flow is not necessary. The entity type, in terms of the nature of business, consulting, real estate investing, et cetera, if you have a lower risk code, that's going to help you get access to more funding. But I'll teach you some tricks on how to kind of tweak that and still get access to funding on even high risk businesses like real estate investing. And the main thing of why business credit cards are so impactful, and this is what I didn't understand at first. Business credit accounts don't report to your personal credit profile, so it doesn't affect your utilization. If you get a $50K card, a business credit card, and you max that card out, it doesn't affect your personal credit score. So then you can go to a different bank and get more access to capital, and you can go to a different bank, et cetera. But if you max out personal credit cards, obviously you guys have seen, your score goes down and it puts you in a very risky position where if your personal credit score stays good, you can always get more access to capital. So you always need to build strong personal credit and then keep strong personal credit to give yourself leeway to get access to even more capital. What you don't need an aged business. This can be a brand new business. However, age does help. I always recommend to people to have 2 business entities. Like even if you have 1 business, file a second LLC just so it can develop age. So when you need capital in the future, it has age, not just a week of age. So if any of you guys just have 1 LLC, I always recommend file a second one. Probably not in California because it's $800 a year, but do it in a cheap state where you can just let that age and it makes sense for you to get access to capital in it in the future. You don't need tax returns, you don't need financials for the 0% cards because for these cards, there's no income verification. That's another thing that blew my mind. You can get access to several hundreds of thousands of dollars through these 0% cards with no income verification. All you need is the good, strong personal credit profile. So the 720 plus, that is a score you will need to then start business credit applications. You do need a social security number or an ITIN number if you are not a citizen and your business does need to be active with the state. It's funny, some people they come to me and try to get funding on a business that's not even active with the state, so I have to say that. But this works really good. You can get several hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's just a couple of testimonies from some of my students. I want to show you guys like this is real stuff and it's happening right now. But why is this important right now? So 1, lending is really good right now. Massive, massive limits. Specifically, Chase is the most lenient bank to get access to mega high limits. 2 days ago, I got someone approved for 2 50K cards on the same business, 100K with 2 applications. You can see a 75K limit, a 50K, Goldman for 40K, and then the Elon Bank for 34K. So when you can stack this from bank to bank to bank, that's how you can quickly amass a couple $100,000 of the 0% interest capital for the 1 to 2 years. The Federal Reserve is probably going to be decreasing their interest rates this year. That means it's going to be a better investing opportunity. So you guys want to be building your purchasing power. For some people, it does take a lot of time. Some people, it takes just a little bit of time. But you want to be prepared and ready so when you have investment opportunities, you can snap your finger, put an application in, get access to the credit, and boom, you're in a good position to take advantage. We talked about this yesterday with Tommy and Eli, but there's record high sign-up bonuses so you guys can get access to the best cards and come away with hundreds of thousands of points that you can use to take double-decker plane flights and take showers on them and eat caviar like travel like Tommy. And this, for example, is a 300,000 point sign-up bonus. On the right, it's a 150,000 point sign-up bonus. And you can do this from card and card and card. So it's quite easy to just get 1 million points just off sign-up bonuses alone. And then you optimize your spend like Tommy talked about yesterday, and you can get several millions coming in on a consistent basis. This is how I've been able to do really cool things around the world. This is the Maldives at the Ritz-Carlton, Overwater Villas. Instead of spending $14,000, I don't know who's spending $14,000 on vacations like that. Certainly not me, but I am spending points. 280,000 points is what it costed for me to spend this 5 days at the Ritz-Carlton in the Maldives. And you can easily do that with a couple sign-up bonuses. It's a 3-step process that I'm going to walk you guys through to help give the best understanding of how to do this. The first thing is going to be dialing in your personal credit profile. There's many things that the underwriters are looking for. They're looking for more than just a score. Some people will come to me and they'll go, I have an 800 credit score. Okay, but you only have 1 personal credit card with a $2,000 limit. That's not a strong profile. They're looking at much more than just a score. And so that's what we're going to help optimize. We're going to hack the bank by becoming incredibly fundable and increasing your bank score internally so the banks want to lend to you. And then understanding what to apply for, when to apply for, and then how exactly to get these applications to the underwriters. So step 1, we're going to dial in your score. You got to check your credit. Like you're driving to a destination, you're always checking the map. I look at my credit every time, right before I'm submitting an application. I want to know exactly what my credit score is because it can change on a daily, monthly basis depending on where balances are. And so you got to check and you want to have this awareness. My favorite is either Experian.com to pay for the 3 bureau report or myscoreiq.com for the 3 bureau report. If you look at Credit Karma shows your Vantage score. It's not a FICO score. You can still monitor certain things, but it's not showing you the score that the banks are looking at. So that's why I highly recommend these 2 services right here, MyScoreIQ and Experian. And so just in kind of quick summary of guidelines, and you definitely want to take notes on things like this. When it comes to payment history, you don't want any negative history in the last 2 years at all. If you do, you want to find a credit repair company that can help remove these derogatories from your credit profile. And it's very easy to do in credit repair with the right professional. In terms of inquiries, you don't want more than 3 inquiries on each bureau in the last 6 months. If you do have more than 3 in the last 6 months, there's really 2 ways to go about it. One, you just let them age out of that 6-month window, or you find a credit repair professional who can dispute these hard inquiries and get them removed from your profile. Basically, through correct disputing, you can get any inquiry removed from your profile as long as it's not associated with the opening of a personal credit account. So if you get inquiries from a business credit account, because that account's not reporting on your personal profile, you can remove those inquiries. You can remove inquiries from mortgages. You can remove basically the majority of inquiries except if they're associated with a personal credit card. In terms of age, we have a slightly older group here, which is good to see. So you probably have no issue when it comes to the credit age of your profile. But if you are under 2 years, you can check the credit profile age. You want it to be over 2 years, and you can always get added as an authorized user to increase your age on your profile. And that's one reason you never want to close any credit cards, because that's just going to decrease your average age. The only reason you'd want to close, actually you never want to close a credit card, but if you have an annual fee on a credit card and you don't want to pay $400 for this card, instead of closing it, just ask them to downgrade you to the free version of that card. And that way you can keep it open. Then just put a subscription on the card, put it on auto pay, and just don't even think about it if you don't want to use it, but keep it open. When it comes to utilization, minimum, less than 30% balance on each credit account. And you can spend a lot of money on these cards on a monthly basis, but at least a few days before the statement closing date, you want to bring those balances down, because the banks are going to update the credit bureaus on that statement closing date. So you can use your personal cards, you got to pay them down before the statement closing date to keep a good personal score. In terms of the amount of primaries, this is the amount of personal credit cards that are in your name, not just authorized users, but the ones that are primary credit accounts. The more of these primary accounts you have, the stronger and thicker profile that you'll have, and the more the banks are going to want to lend to you. But the thing with these is you don't want to apply for too many too quickly, because then that makes you look riskier to the banks. So my cap is no more than 2 personal credit cards in a 6-month window. That is super important. If you have 3 open in the last 6 months, or over 6 or over 5 in the last 12 months, you're going to get denied. So cap it at 2 personal credit cards every 6 months. It's super important. Collective limits, this is talking about when you add up all of your personal credit limits. We want to see at least $15,000. Optimal is between $40K and $80K of collective personal credit limits on primary accounts, not authorized users. And there is an amount that is too much personal credit. Over $90,000 of collective personal credit can actually be a negative thing when trying to get high limits on business credit cards. The banks actually don't like to see too much personal credit. Does anyone here have over $100,000 of collective personal credit? Okay, just a couple people, not a big deal, but Tommy. But yeah, over 100,000 is actually a bad thing in terms of getting access to large limits on business credit cards. So I would actually recommend to manually reduce those limits to under 100K. You won't get a 50K approval at Chase if you have over $100,000 of collective limits on all your cards. I've seen it several times. So you want to manually reduce those to something under 100K. This is a good way to diversify your credit mix. We have a lot of real estate investors, probably a lot of people with mortgages, maybe some people with personal loans or auto loans, et cetera. So you might already have a diversified credit mix, but for me, I only had revolving accounts. And so it was a very undiverse credit mix, which is 10% of your score. And so the way I diversified this was actually to do a pledge loan. And so with Navy Federal, and you can do this with SoFi, you can put $10,000 into a bank account, and you can loan against it as collateral, and then pay it off to 95%, and then it shows up as a 95% off personal loan on your credit report. So this alone increased my score from 800 to 826. And that's because my score, or my credit mix, I should say, was not diversified. But if you guys already have personal loans, installment loans, student loans, mortgages, this wouldn't be a big bonus for you. But for me, because I only had credit cards, it was a massive bonus that increased 25%, 25 points, up to 826. So one of my students has an 850 credit score. And I was kind of breaking this down to figure out how can I understand exactly how someone got an 850 credit score and how can I teach other people. And so for him, he had 20 open accounts. 16 of them were primary credit cards. These are credit cards that he opened. One was an authorized user that he got added onto someone else's credit card. He had 2 installment loans and 1 mortgage. His average age was 6 years of credit, and he had $71,000 of collective primary limits. So that's a good example to follow. And to get 16 credit cards, because you also have to consider your average age. So you have to do this over a consistent or quite a long time to do, and that's why I recommend to apply for a few personal credit cards a year if you're interested in getting a very high credit score, which will obviously help you get better rates on mortgages and better rates on things in general. So I do recommend that if you're interested in building strong credit. Personal credit mistakes. I see people make a lot of easy mistakes, and I want to help make no mistakes. Number one is applying prematurely. And so really, before applying for anything, you need to have a good score, 700 plus score. Your balances need to be low, your inquiries need to be low, you need to be in a good position where the banks want to lend to you because you want to get a good limit on your personal credit cards to increase that collective credit limits. Because the higher limits you have on personal cards, the better approvals you're going to get on business cards. And I mentioned this rule before, it's very important. Not applying for more than 2 personal credit cards in a 6-month time frame. If you shotgun approach and do 5 at once on personal credit cards, you're not going to get approved for any business credit accounts. It's not possible. Another thing you should do is focus on credit cards at the tier 1 banks, like Chase, Citi, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, because these tier 1 bank accounts, credit accounts, look better on your profile. A lot of people will go to Navy Federal or different credit unions and they'll get massive 30K limits on these credit union accounts, but that is not as important as getting, say, for example, a $10,000 limit at Chase, because that Chase account on your profile looks way better than a credit union account, because the credit union is a lower tier of a bank. And so you want to focus on the big banks. Chase is a no-brainer. Go get a couple personal cards at Chase, absolute no-brainer. Citi, Bank of America as well. Really good banks to get some first cards with. When it comes to increasing your collective limits, couple cards you want to avoid, at least when you're trying to build up your limits, you want to avoid the American Express charge cards because they don't report a limit. There's spending power, but on your credit report, you can see here, there's no actual limit. And so I have some of these personal charge cards, but I've done that way later after I already built up my comparable credit. And so you want to focus on credit cards to build up that collective credit. And some of my favorite high limit personal credit cards is the Built card. This card you can pay rent on, issued by Wells Fargo, so it's a tier 1 account, looks really good on your credit profile, also gives you a good limit, and you can pay rent on it and get points. The Chase Freedom Unlimited and the Chase Sapphire Reserve are cards that I highly recommend to give you good limits and build a relationship with a very good bank. So back on Built. So Built, and going back to the travel hacking like Eli and Tommy talked about yesterday, Built points are the only points you can transfer into American Airlines in terms of transferable bank points, which they talked about yesterday. And so I love the Built card because I can pay rent on this credit card, and it doesn't charge me a merchant processing fee. They give me an account number and a routing number, then I can use that with my landlord, and it looks like I'm paying with a bank account. And they're going to also give you a check if you need to pay your landlord with a check if you pay rent. And then you can transfer those points to American Airlines, and then if you refer people to this card as well, you can get additional points. And this is a flight that I took from London to Abu Dhabi, right next to Dubai, and it only cost me 62,000 miles, okay? So I've been spending rent money on my Built card. I've referred a few people to the card, and over several months, I came to about 60,000 miles. I transferred those miles into, I think British Airways is the program I booked this with, and I got this free, incredible first-class flight. It was an A380 double-decker plane. Yes, that's me taking a shower on the plane. Had to include that, but just the most incredible flight I've ever taken that I got for $114 in fees is what it came out of pocket for me. But I got these points because I put my rent on the Built credit card and transferred them to American Airlines. And American Airlines miles are very, very valuable.
Jack, how much would that flight normally cost?
12 to 15,000.
Wow.
Where's Carlton? I can't even see him.
Back here.
Cool, yeah, very expensive. A price that I personally would not pay. I like paying points that I'm getting for free just by using the right credit cards. So step number 2, we're gonna hack the bank. I like taking advantage of the banks, and I like getting access to money, and I like teaching people on how to do it as well. So we're gonna increase your fundability and your bank score, which is what they look internally in terms of your risk to lend to. So a couple things that are important is when it comes to your business name, you don't want it to sound high risk. So capital, investments, real estate investing, those are very high risk things. And so I like to keep a name for a business extremely vague, and it's gonna help you get access to more capital if you do so. If you do have a high risk name and you need to change it, you can just submit an amendment to the Secretary of State, change your name real quick, not a big deal, then change it on your bank account, not a big deal at all. But a high-risk name can easily shoot yourself in the foot. When it comes to an address, don't use a P.O. box, and a residential address is fine. You don't need a business address. I did all of my amazing funding on a residential address. When it comes to the actual risk of your business, the nature of the business, this is also very important, and specifically important for a lot of real estate investors, because what you do is real estate investing, and the banks don't want to lend these types of credit products to real estate investors. And so one easy hack around this is if your business, if your entity does some sort of consulting in real estate, if it does some sort of management in real estate, well, you want to lean into that. You want to lean into that NAICS code because it puts you in a lower risk category. So real estate management or real estate consulting is way better than real estate investing in the eyes of the banks. So if part of your business does some of those things, you want to lean into it. If you're a straight up real estate investor and you're just flipping houses left and right, one strategy to get around this is actually just to file a brand new entity, like a consulting entity, marketing entity. You just file a brand new entity and say you do marketing or consulting, et cetera, and then you can get access to funding with that brand new side entity. And once you get access to the funding, you can just loan it over to the business you actually want to use it on. So that's an easy way around it for real estate investors. You want to ensure that this NAICS code is accurate in the places that matter, which is going to be on your business checking accounts. So a lot of times, actually every time, when you go in to open up a business checking account, the banker's going to ask, what does your business do? And what they're trying to figure out is what kind of NAICS code that they're going to give you. And so what I would do the research ahead of time on the NAICS website and figure out what is the best, lowest risk code that makes sense to be able to use, and then give that to the banker. Because the banker could shoot yourself in the foot or shoot you in the foot by just giving you a code that's not actually accurate and putting you in a higher risk category. So don't let the banker have control of that. You should go in, do your research beforehand, and give them that code. So on your business checking accounts, the code should be accurate. On your business credit bureaus, like Experian Small Business and Dun & Bradstreet, it's also important to update this code. And then the Secretary of State business listing, if you do a business search for your business, sometimes it says nature of business. This is the least important of the three, but you just want to make sure your nature of business on the business search is, in fact, accurate. Banking relationships. So this is super important because the better relationships you can build with the right banks, the more funding you're going to get access to. And so I highly recommend to prioritize banking relationships in this specific order. Chase at number 1, Bank of America number 2, Goldman Sachs. But with Goldman Sachs, to get approved for their business credit cards, the only issue people have is failure or unable to verify personal or business information, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. So I have found that if people have a banking relationship with Goldman Sachs for longer than 3 months, they don't run into that verification issue. I don't know why it is, but if you bank with them for 3 months, those people are not getting that denial reason. So I always recommend do a personal savings at Goldman Sachs. You can do it, set it up in 10 minutes. It's free. You can do it online. Very easy. Get in their system so you don't run into verification issues later, and they lend very good on business credit cards. Number 4, I would put US Bank. Chase, no-brainer. If you guys are not already banking at Chase, that is probably definitely one of my biggest recommendations. Go bank at Chase. They have the best business credit cards. They're the most lenient on limits, and the banking portals are incredibly simple and easy to use. Bank of America, if you don't have a banking relationship with them, they're not going to lend you a business credit card. So you have to show activity in a bank account with Bank of America before getting a business credit card with them. If If you have an auto loan with them or any kind of other loans, that's going to significantly help for sure, but they're very, very relationship based. Banks that I would straight up avoid, Citibank, in terms of banking relationships, Citibank, Capital One, and Discover, I see zero value in banking with them whatsoever. Or even credit unions. I would highly recommend to focus on these banks right here I listed on the left, because I've just seen the best funding available when you build those relationships with these top 4 banks. Credit relationships. So another way to build a strong relationship so the banks trust you more is through the credit cards. And so when it comes down to being strategic with the personal credit cards you're applying for, another thing you want to factor in is, okay, how can I build a relationship with the banks that will give me the most money on these business credit accounts? Okay, cool. So I can get the Freedom Unlimited on this Chase card or the Chase Sapphire Reserve to build that relationship with Chase. So when I do the Chase Business Inc. Unlimited, they're giving me a $50K approval, a $75K approval. But if you go in with no relationship, you're not going to get a high approval. And this differs depending on the bank. Some are more relationship-based and some are not. And I've just been doing this long enough to know the ones that you really should prioritize and the ones that doesn't really make the most sense too, because it's an opportunity cost of building a relationship with a better bank. American Express, an easy way to do this is through their charge cards. So the American Express Business Gold, if you get the Amex Business Gold, which is actually one of the best cards to generate points on that Tommy talked about yesterday, get this card and spend on it for a few months. And then if you want the 0% card, then get it several months later. Because now you have the first business credit card that's easier to get. Spending on it is going to build trust with them. That way you can get the 25 or 40K limit on the American Express Business Cash Card instead of a lousy 2K limit that a lot of people get if they don't build a credit relationship with American Express first. US Bank, similar strategy. Go in with a non-0% card first, spend on it for a few months, and then go for the 0% card. That's going to give you the best shot of getting a 50K approval on the 0% for 18-month card. Easy ways to damage relationships, and I've done all of this, and I really want to make sure you guys don't do any of this. Checking account overdrafts. Okay, if someone pulls money from your bank account or an auto pay hits and your bank account goes negative, that's a very bad thing in the eyes of the banks. So you want to make sure that this does not happen because they're going to flag you internally and it's going to decrease your banking score. It's common sense, right? But it can happen. I just want to make sure it doesn't happen to you guys. If there's an auto pay, for example, on a Chase card that will pull money from, auto pay on an American Express card that pulls from a Chase bank account, and there's not enough money in that Chase bank account, American Express is going to see that and flag you as insufficient funds, which is a very bad thing. They're going to cap your cards, they're going to reduce your limits, they're going to make it harder to give you more approvals, et cetera. So you just want to make sure that that does not happen. It's very bad, it's very hard to dig yourself out of that hole. Internal late payments. So if you're late on a payment and it's less than 30 days late, that's not going to damage your credit profile, but it's going to ding you internally with the bank. So if you pay a payment 10 days late, it's not going to affect your credit profile unless it's 30 days late, but it is going to affect your banking score with them internally. And if that happens, you want to build your trust back for several months before any future applications. What, when, and how to apply when it comes to these cards, Capital One, Discover, business cards. These cards, business cards, report to personal credit profiles, which defeats the whole point of being a business credit card. The whole point is it doesn't report to your personal credit. So I don't understand how these do. Capital One, Discover. I would avoid them as 0% interest business credit cards because they report. So if you max it out, it's going to affect your score. In terms of US Bank, so let me say this. In terms of where your business is registered in, that's going to tell you where you have access to funding. If you're in Florida, you're only going to get access to banks that are in Florida. If your business is registered in California, you're in the California footprint. One thing that's interesting about US Bank is they only have branches, I think, in 20-something states, but they lend business credit cards nationwide, which is kind of a rare thing. Truist, for example, is only in, I think, 18-ish states, but they only lend business credit cards to those 18-ish states. So keep that in mind. US Bank will lend to all states, which is incredible. But generally, the state your business is registered in is going to tell you what business funding options you have available to you. A really cool way to hack this is if you do a foreign filing into a different state. You're going to register your business into a second state is going to give you access to additional banks. So if your business is registered in California and you want to get access to Truist and maybe TD Bank and some other Florida banks, you can do a foreign filing and register your business also in Florida, and that's going to give you access to Florida banks. So if you get to a point where you feel like you've kind of tapped out California, at least in the short term, cool, let's tap into a different state. I did this into Pennsylvania with one of my businesses, and that got me access to 3 additional banks that didn't have access to, and then I got approved for $135,000 of additional funding from these newer banks because I did exactly this. So you just do a foreign filing into that new state. When it comes to inquiries, any credit application, or majority of credit applications, you're going to get hard inquiry. And so one thing on an advanced strategy is to understand what bureau the bank is going to pull from. Like US Bank, in most states, will pull from TransUnion, okay? If your TransUnion bureau maybe has late payments on only TransUnion, maybe TransUnion, you have 10 inquiries in the last 6 months, okay, you don't want to apply for anything that's going to pull from TransUnion. In your Experian bureau, maybe that is very low on inquiries. Okay, so let's find a bank that will pull from Experian because the inquiries on Experian are very low. You guys follow me on that? It's very important. Inquiries is basically will slow you down. If you max out your inquiries and you keep applying for things that will pull from that same bureau, you're going to get denied. And so understanding what bank pulls from what bureau is very important in terms of a max funding strategy. And you can do that just by asking your friends, hey, do you have a Chase card? Cool. You're in the same state as me. Where do they pull from? Experian. Okay, cool. Now I know. You can do a little bit of Googling, but asking your peers is a very good strategy. When it comes to applying for these cards, it is way more beneficial if you guys can find business relationship managers to help facilitate these applications. You don't need these in all states, or all banks, I mean, but some banks, it's crucial, and that's how you get the exceptionally high limits. Did I help you?
Yes, you did.
Okay, cool. Yeah, what's your name? Mark? I helped Mark, I gave him step-by-step instructions because we're in the same tax alchemy group, and he's like, I saw him posting a question in the main channel, and he's like talking about a business credit card, and I slacked him. I'm like, do exactly this, find this person in the bank, etc. And what was the limit you got?
I think we got 50 and 25.
75K total, congratulations. So he was able to do this by finding a business relationship manager in his branch at Chase. And so that's a crucial thing to do at Chase specifically, is finding these relationship managers, because oftentimes they'll send you a DocuSign application, which goes to the underwriting team, not just a computer algorithm. It's very important for Chase. At American Express, for example, they don't have relationship managers that help out with the 0% cards. So at Amex, it doesn't matter. US Bank, Chase, KeyBank, Truist, it does matter. It's very helpful to get you those high limits. If you have multiple businesses, how do you figure out which business to get the funding for? In terms of a max funding strategy, say you're really trying to get access to 150K. Okay, you have 5 different businesses, maybe just 2. You have 2 different businesses. How do I determine which business I should apply for? Okay, we're gonna look at the age of both. Generally, the more age, the better. Next thing we're looking at is the nature of the business. Is one real estate investing, fix and flips? Very risky, probably avoid that one. Is one maybe a marketing agency, or can it be spun as a marketing business? Potentially. So I would go with the lower risk nature of business over the higher risk. That's how you prioritize between the two. And as I mentioned before, having multiple entities is a very good thing because the age in the future is going to be beneficial. These are my parents. I helped my parents get access to over 200 grand collectively. And we did this because my dad is a software programmer. He's been doing the same thing for several decades. And what we did is I had my dad give my mom 25% ownership of the business on paper, operating agreement, very easy. And because now she's a 25% owner of the business, she now has access to apply for credit on behalf of the business. And so instead of just my dad getting 100K, it was him getting 100K and my mom getting 100K, just because he gave on paper my mom 25% of the business and she had good credit. So if you have a significant other, a business partner, or I guess they would already have equity, but you can do this. If they have 25% ownership, they can then get access to capital on the same business. Pretty cool trick. When it comes to moving limits between cards, this is an incredible pro strategy. You can move limits between Chase business credit cards. And why this is pro, say for example, Mark gets a $50,000 business credit card. The 0% ends, he pays the balance down, then he applies for a brand new business credit card and gets another 50K. And now the new 50K is 0%. He can move the old 50K that expired, move the limit from that card over to the brand new 0% card. Now he has 100K of 0%. And then you can do that a third year. As you get higher and higher, it's harder to get those high approvals, but the principle is still there. You can keep rolling those limits over to new cards and get higher limits on 0%. So you can do that very well at Chase. American Express, you can do the same thing. American Express is the only bank that I have seen to allow you to move personal credit limits over to business credit cards. So that's one of the reasons you want to focus on American Express when building collective credit, because even if you only get a 20K limit on an American Express business card, and you have a 20K American Express Delta Gold, you can move that limit from that personal card over to the business card and get more 0%. It's the only bank you can do that with, which is incredible. Bank of America, you can move the limits as well. Similar strategy. I had 35K on a Bank of America card that expired. Then I got approved for 44K of 0%. Then I moved the 35K over to the new cards. Then I had 76,000 of 0% for 9 months at Bank of America. So the transferring of limits is a really good strategy. US Bank, unfortunately, does not allow that. So how do you turn the credit into cash? So a lot of you guys are real estate investors. There are different platforms where you can pay different vendors and people in the real estate space, like plastic.com can help make credit card payments to certain vendors, et cetera. But if you really need cash and they're not able to help send money to that specific person, you can, and this is definitely a gray area. You won't tell the banks you're gonna do this, but it's very common. So if I wanna liquidate, we'll call it liquidating credit. If I wanna liquidate $50,000 off a business credit card so I can have the cash, I'm gonna hit up one of my friends that has a very successful coaching program, maybe like Carlton, and say, hey, Carlton, can you send me an invoice for $50,000 and then send me a refund a few days later once that money clears? It's gonna cost 3%, it's gonna charge the card, and then the wire for $48,500 is gonna be sent to you if you have a good friend that can help out with that. That's how you liquidate a credit card. You run it through a merchant processor and you get the cash off the card. You don't wanna do this unless the merchant processor you're using is seasoned. If your friend has a coaching company, he's only selling $2,000 transactions, you can't just run $50,000 through it. It's gonna flag it. So you wanna find a good friend like Carlton or someone else with a high ticket program that can facilitate this. There's also kind of companies that can facilitate this. I can direct you in the right direction if you need help with that. But that's how you do it. How to balance transfer on non-balance transfer cards. Same strategy. So if you get to the end of a $50,000 0% period, you still got $50,000 on this card, you can't pay it down, what are you gonna do? You're gonna apply for a business credit card at a different bank, and then even if that brand new card doesn't allow a balance transfer, you can then liquidate the credit on that new card into cash, and then pay off the old card. Now the balance is moved to the new card. You guys follow me on that? Yeah. Get the new card, liquidate it, pay off the old card. It costs 3% if you can find a friend with a merchant processor like that. That's how you balance transfer between cards that don't allow a balance transfer. I talked about inquiry removal. It's very easy to get inquiries removed through specific disputing strategies. There's credit repair companies that can help do this, but just know if you have a ton of inquiries, that's not a big deal. Just find someone that can help do this, pay them $250, $500, usually what it costs for an inquiry service, and then they can just dispute them, get them removed from your credit profile, so it won't slow you down. So when it comes to business lines of credit, I talked about this, incredible product, it comes with interest, it acts as a bank account. Generally, you need 2 years in business, and there's different programs for these business lines of credit. There's the no-doc, which some banks won't ask you for financials. Like Wells Fargo is a great example of a no-doc, up to 50K business line of credit. I just got 35K there. They didn't ask for tax returns. They just looked at my credit, and they gave me 35K, came at 15% interest, was hoping for 10, gave me 15%. But now I got 35K access to if I need it. A low doc program is when they ask for 1 year of tax returns, and a full doc is when they ask for 2 years of tax returns. This is the most common for sure. Like Chase is gonna ask for 2 years, et cetera. But what I would do if you're interested in getting access to business lines of credit is you want to look at banks in your state and then reach out to them and ask for them details of their business line of credit programs to figure out what amounts they can give out that are unsecured, that don't require a UCC filing, which is a lien on your business. A lot of these BLOCs will do it without a UCC, but some will. So you kind of want to avoid the ones that require a UCC because that doesn't look good on your business. It's a lien on your business. You ask them what documents are required to get approved. Sometimes they'll tell you no docs. They're just going to look at your credit. Sometimes they're going to say 1 year of tax returns. So asking them what documents are required. Ask them about the application process. Is it virtual or do you have to go into the branch? With business credit cards, it's a very easy process, very straightforward. With business lines of credit, it's a whole nother beast. Every bank has a different application process, whether they make you go in the branch, it's an online application, or it's a video call, or it's a DocuSign, they're all different. So asking them what does that application process look like, and if you can avoid going in the branch, obviously saves you probably a couple hours. And the last one is a business checking account required prior to the application. It's good to know. If it is, you want to go open that. There's just examples of how I would ask those questions in an email. So you guys got a lot of really good travel hacking strategies yesterday from the best in the world, Travel Like Tommy and Eli Travel Guy. But I'm gonna go, I do a lot of travel hacking, a lot of traveling in general. So I just wanna do some rapid fire strategies on what has really helped me accumulate points and travel hack to absolutely incredible destinations around the world. This is my stack right here. This is how I generate the most amount of points based on what I spend. And as Tommy talked about yesterday, you want to optimize your spend and getting the right cards based on what you spend. So Chase Sapphire Reserve, I use that for personal dining, personal travel, and personal Lyft rides. For Bilt, I put my rent on my Bilt card. Everything, and then groceries, I put on my Amex Gold. And then personal Marriott expenses, I put on the Marriott. And then everything else, I get the Capital One Venture X that gives me 2x points for everything else that's not in the other categories. And then business, most of my expenses go on my business cards, fortunately as a business owner, but the Chase Business Inc. Preferred gives me 3x on travel. So all business travel, all ads, internet, shipping, things like that, I put on my Chase Business Inc. Preferred. Amex Business Gold is actually where I put my ads on because it gives me 4x on advertising spend as well as 4x on dining. So this is an absolute no-brainer card for most entrepreneurs to get the Amex Business Gold because everyone is spending money on dining, right? And then the Amex Biz employee cards, I'm gonna skip that strategy, but I'm just gonna skip that strategy. So this is an Airbnb we got for my birthday in Ibiza last August. Tommy was there, we had a great time. One thing I did right before booking it was on Airbnb. So instead of going straight to Airbnb.com, I went to British Airways. I made a British Airways account. I went to the shopping portal. I clicked Airbnb, same platform, it's just like the tagging was different. And I made that Airbnb booking through British Airways shopping portal. And then I got 3 Avios British Airways points for every dollar spent. And then I got 3x points on my Chase card because I used a travel card. So I got $30,000 Chase points, 3x on travel, and then I got 3x Avios points or miles because I was in the British Airways travel portal. And so with 30,000 Avios points on British Airways, if I was able to do this 2 times in a year, that's how you get the Etihad double-decker big plane flight to Dubai. Just incredible. 60,000. So I just got 30,000 for just a few extra clicks to go into British Airways and book the Airbnb through the British Airways shopping portal. The easiest way to double dip on your points, in my opinion. And a lot of people do travel on Airbnbs. That's the employee card I'm gonna skip, it's kind of tedious. Airline cards. The only reason you would wanna spend on airline cards, in my opinion, is to chase status with an airline. Tommy does this, and he tries to get status with airlines, and you get free upgrades, things like that, et cetera. But if you're trying to maximize the points accumulation, it's not best to spend on these cards. So I have the United Club card, and it gives me access to the United Club Airport Lounge, which is great, but I never use the card. If I spent that card on United, I would get 3x United miles per dollar spent. But if I use my Chase Sapphire Reserve or preferred, ink preferred, I would also get 3x, but 3x Chase points. Would I want 3x Chase points or 3x United miles? And I want Chase miles or Chase points because they're transferable bank points. So I can always transfer those points into United, but I can't transfer United pretty much anywhere. They're fixed in United. So that's why I never see any reason to spend on these cards unless you have a strategy on chasing status. This was a cool flight I did on the Emirates first class, double-decker plane, also had a shower, had the bar in the back. It was from Dubai to Amsterdam. And just a quick strategy I'll go over with you guys. And I almost made this mistake. There was two aircraft types leaving Dubai to Amsterdam. There was the Emirates A380, aircraft type is the A380, or there was also the 777. So the 777 is a single-decker aircraft. The A380 is the double-decker. So literally the two flights leaving at like about the same time, basically the same amount of money, but I had the option to click the A380, and I would have blown that if I didn't look at the aircraft type. And several years ago, I didn't even care to look at the aircraft type. Maybe you guys have never looked at it either. So I recommend to look at the aircraft type, and this website called Aero Lupa will show you the seat maps on different aircraft. So you can see it's a double-decker. Cool, I obviously want that aircraft type. Another thing to do is making sure you're picking your seats because you want to make sure you're just dialed in. If you look on the left, the seat behind me is slightly less ideal because they're closer to the aisle. Like the one I'm in is just a little bit more private. It's kind of just like the small minor details, but if it takes you 10 seconds to just pick the ideal seat, you choose the seat with just a little bit more privacy. And then if you want a good seat with your travel companion, you would want to make sure you're choosing the one I circled on the row 11, the ones that are straight, because those are the ones that are closer to each other in the middle. If you did the diagonal ones, it's still cool, like the window goes down, but you're like farther away. So it's like small things that can really enhance your experience. And you can do that by looking at the seat maps. And even if you book your flight on, like the Etihad flight, I booked it on British Airways, I believe. Once you get the reservation code, you then have to go to Etihad to book to choose your seat. You can't do it on British Airways. Like I booked the flight on British Airways, it was Etihad, then I took the code and I picked my seat on Etihad. Highly recommended to do this. Well, that's it, guys. Hopefully you got some good value. Hopefully you're inspired to build your purchasing power.
Let's give a huge round of applause for Jack McCall.
I don't have any of those cool QR codes, but if you want to find me on Instagram, it's Jack McCall. I have a website, it's creditstacking.com. Follow me on Instagram, let me know if I can help in any way.
Yeah, you guys should definitely follow Jack on Instagram. It's King of Debt, right?
I changed it to Jack McCall.
Oh. He doesn't have his superhero name anymore. Jack McCall. Go ahead and add Jack. Do we have any questions on accessing 0% interest credit?
Right here.
Oh, sorry.
How do you go about acquiring more credit with a H corporation, if that's something that you do?
So applying for credit with an age corporation is beneficial. Where people sometimes run into an issue if they buy an age corporation from someone else and there's flags on it, like UCCs or liens, or like it's flagged somehow like that entity. But you can have a good strategy on purchasing an age corporation as long as it's not flagged. And so that's where there's the risk of, spending a few $1,000s to buy a corporation with 10 years of age, but there's the risk of just blowing your shot because there's flags on the business. So the age definitely helps, but there's a risk in making sure you're getting one that's clean. Yeah.
All right, 2 questions. What is a UCC? And then I wanted to know, but the build card, could that be used for the mortgage and I have to pay that 3%?
Great question. So she's asking about UCC filing. So a UCC filing is basically a lien on your business. So if you get a BLOC, a business line of credit at Chase, for any amount, they're going to put a UCC on your business. And so I just got a $90K business line of credit at Chase. They put a UCC filing on my business while I have that business line of credit open. And so that's not necessarily ideal for future loans I have because they see that loan. So if I'm in trouble, I have to pay back Chase first. So if other banks lend to me, They know that I have to pay Chase back first. Yeah, and the second question is about using the built credit card for rent. Sorry, for mortgage. So there's a card called Rocket, the Rocket Visa card. That one you can use to pay your mortgage on. I don't have experience with that card because it's a newer card, but it's called Rocket Visa, and I believe it's a credit card you can use to pay mortgages on. What was that? I don't know. But it's called Rocket Visa, and I'm not sure. I wish I had an answer for you, but it's Rocket Visa.
Guys, let's give one huge round of applause to Jack McCall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, bro. Thanks.
All right.